Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Today's episode is the result of my lovely patrons coming together and voting for the archetype that I cover today. And despite some strong competition, one of the game's most enduring archetypes won out. While not a powerhouse when played pure, at least in the TCG, many of its component parts keep making their way into ritual decks, from Drytrons to Megalith and everything in between. Premiering in the August 2016 import set Dragons of Legend Unleashed, Cyber Angels is the archetype piloted by one of Duel Academy's all-star students, Alexis Rhodes. At least her anime counterparts do. We'll have to save manga Alexis for another day. They've got a wide range of abilities from support to board wipes, and now I'm going to show you what they can do when they aren't split up, but rather act as one mechanical heavenly host. We'll study the scriptures to identify our angels, invoke their wrath to see their tactics, then pray for some outside assistance. It's time to worship at the altar of value with Cyber Angels Explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. So what's the deal with Cyber Angels? Well, they're a series of light fairy monsters with some effect and a lot of ritual. And those ritual monsters themselves can be divided into two groups. The playmakers with the big splashy effects, and the support crew that either have on-field effects or effects that activate when they're tributed, which is very good for the theme with a summon mechanic that is saturated in tributing. Oh, and we're also going to cover Alexis's Cyber Girl archetype because there is some overlap due to future support, and honestly, when else am I going to be talking about these? But because they don't have a lot of synergy with Cyber Angels, we're just going to blitz right through them real quick. Blade Skater is a level 4 Earth Warrior normal monster with 1400 attack and 1500 defense that doesn't really tie in with the rest of the Cyber Girls, if not for the fact that it's a named fusion material. Cyber Tutu is a level 3 Earth Warrior monster with 1000 attack and 800 defense, and if the attack of all monsters your opponent controls is higher than this card's, Tutu can attack your opponent directly. Fun fact, if any of those opponent's monsters are face down, this completely shuts down that attacking directly effect. Though if you're actually running this, there are much bigger problems going on. Etwal Cyber is a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 1200 attack and 1600 defense, and if it attacks directly, it gains 500 attack during the damage step only. I'm pretty sure by this point you had access to good normal summons with 1700 or more attack printed right on there. So it's more about emphasizing the attacking directly theme more than actually being useful, and having playability in Messenger of Peace style stall decks. Cyber Gymnast is a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 800 attack and 1800 defense, and once per turn, you can discard a card, then target a face-up attack position monster your opponent controls and destroy it. This is fairly decent. Not in constructed, mind you, but if you run across this in some kind of sealed environment, it is a less flexible exiled force. Cyber Prima is a level 6 Light Warrior monster with 2300 attack and 1600 defense, and if this card is tribute summoned, you can destroy all face-up spell cards on the field, including your own, which is pretty frustrating. Not the best on tribute summon effect, but also not the worst. Field spells and continuous spells can be a pain in the ass, so having a way to deal with those is kinda nice. The last member of this section is Cyber Blader, a level 7 Earth Warrior fusion monster with 2100 attack and 800 defense, requiring Etwal Cyber and Blade Skater as material, and its fusion summon must be conducted with the above fusion material. While your opponent controls only one monster, this card can't be destroyed by battle. While your opponent controls only 2 monsters, double this card's attack. And while your opponent only controls 3 monsters, negate the effects of your opponent's spell, trap, and effect monster cards. This one's pretty terrible because once your opponent gets to 4 monsters, this is very underwhelming. But this effect seems to line up ridiculously well with Duel Links and especially Speed Duel formats. So I don't want to get too critical over this. In fact, Speed Duelists, can you let me know if Cyber Blader is actually good there? Oh, and I don't want to miss out on the normal trap card Double Passe. When an opponent's monster declares an attack on a face-up attack position monster you control, make that attack a direct attack instead, and burn your opponent for damage equal to the attack of the attack target. Also, that monster you control can attack your opponent directly next turn. So basically, this makes it so both monsters attack the other player directly immediately, then you get to swing in directly again next turn if you still have that monster. This is a pretty cool effect, very Yu-Gi-Oh! Not very efficient, but over-the-top combat tricks are never gonna be passé. Okay, with that out of the way, let's cover the real monsters, starting with Cyber Egg Angel, a level 2 monster with 200 attack and 300 defense, and if this card is summoned, you can add a Machine Angel spell or Ritual Sanctuary from your deck to your hand. Those Machine Angel spells encompass the ritual spells we're going to be making use of, but there's also now a wide range of support cards that are now searchable under that banner. But the big takeaway is Ritual Sanctuary, a field spell card that has general ritual synergies, but works best with us. Egg isn't looking too put together, but you can't build a deck without breaking a few angelic creatures and drinking their delicious Elysian yolk. Cyber Petite Angel is a level 2 monster with 300 attack and 200 defense, officially making this a Karibo. If this card is summoned, you can add a Cyber Angel monster or Machine Angel ritual from your deck to your hand. But because that ritual is covered by Egg Angel, we're much more interested in getting those Cyber Angel monsters. As is the usual case, ritual decks need engines to assemble their pieces in just the right place to make them work, and Petite Angel is here to help. And while the low level means it isn't quite suited as raw material for executing those ritual summons, don't worry, the rest of the theme has that covered. See, what I'm worried about is Amuro Ray showing up to take back his toy. This is basically just Haro with some Yu-Gi-Oh themed cruft on it. The last non-ritual we'll be covering here today is Cyber Tutubon, a level 5 Earth Warrior monster with 1800 attack and 1600 defense, and you can special summon this card from your hand by tributing a warrior or fairy type monster from your hand or field. And if this card is tributed for a ritual summon, you can target a ritual spell card in your grave and add it to your hand. This looks like it should belong with the rest of the Cyber Girls, but with the fairy and ritual synergies, I felt it was more appropriate to have them in this part of the video. And with plenty of monsters that have effects when tributed, this can be a pretty helpful enabler if you don't have a better option, and recovering a ritual spell certainly isn't nothing. As time's gone on, however, this monster has been made pretty irrelevant, not helped by its 5th level making it unsearchable by one of the best search spells in the game. Still, it's nice to see that the girls and the angels are still on speaking terms, since it looks like they share a common Cyber Tutu bond. That about brings us to the ritual monsters. Quick note, any of them can be ritual summoned via Machine Angel ritual. Cyber Angel Natasha is a level 5 monster with 1000 attack and defense, and once per turn you can target a face-up monster you control and gain life points equal to half its attack. When a ritual monster you control is targeted for an attack, you can negate that attack, and if this card is in the grave, you can banish one other Cyber Angel monster from your grave, then target a monster your opponent controls. Special summon Natasha, and if you do, take control of that monster. Ooh, we're starting off strong with this section because we're looking at probably the best payoff the deck has to offer, at least for non-Cyber Angel decks. Themes like Drytron would cycle through Ben 10s fairly regularly, ending on a properly summoned Natasha, which it must be for it to utilize its own effect, that you would then just link off. Now it's in the grave, so you can banish one of those Ben 10s to revive it and take a monster. And look, nary a hint of a hard once per turn clause on this card, so you can link it off again, burn another Ben 10, and do it over and over until you've subsumed your opponent's entire field, all while gaining a nasty chunk of life points along the way, because yeah, it also helps you win in time for some reason. It's even a ridiculous wall because the attack negate is also not once per turn. Base Cyber Angels tend to lack the kind of engine that fully takes advantage of this card, but even a single activation can ruin an opponent's setup because yeah, it's multiple copies of Snatch Steal all rolled into one. Chalk this up to another win for Hot Centaurs in Yu-Gi-Oh! Between this and Ptolemaeus, do they ever miss? Cyber Angel Ida-10 is a level 6 monster with 1600 attack and 2000 defense, and if ritual summoned, you can add a ritual spell from your deck or grave to your hand. And if this card is tributed, you can make all ritual monsters you control gain 1000 attack and defense. And no, that doesn't go away at the end of the turn. A 1000-point boost to both stats is already pretty savage, making meek monsters into mighty masters of combat. And if you choose to ritual summon it first, you're buying back the ritual spell used to make it. Better yet, you could choose to buy it back or get a different one, once again helping to smooth the edges when it comes to splashing in other themes. But despite how good the card is, it leaves me with more questions than answers. Like, Ida-10? Ida-10 what? Ida-10 spaghetti? Cyber Angel Ben 10 is a level 6 monster with 1800 attack and 1500 defense, and if this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the grave, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original defense in the graveyard. And if this card is tributed, you can add a light fairy monster from your deck to your hand. Here it is, folks, the Cyber Angel. If you've played against a ritual deck, you've seen this card in action, and for good reason. It's broken. Like, literally, those search criteria include itself and doesn't specifically exclude itself, meaning you've got 6 levels of monsters that can just replace itself, and at any point you can branch off into any other light fairy monster. You could grab another Ben 10, you could grab a Manju of the 10,000 Hands, you could grab a Diviner of the Herald, for crying out loud. It's not picky. If there's a ritual trick out there, Ben 10 is probably a part of it. You could say that Ben 10 is the Omnitrix. Cyber Angel Dakini is a level 8 monster with 2700 attack and 2400 defense, and if this card is ritual summoned, you can make your opponent send a monster they control to the grave, their choice. It gives all your ritual monsters piercing battle damage, and once per turn during your end phase, you can target a ritual monster or machine angel ritual in your graveyard and add it to your hand. While not effective against wide fields, this does answer single strong monsters, even ones unaffected by your card effects, because this makes your opponent send it to the graveyard. You don't touch it at all. The piercing is also a nice touch, and the longer you keep this around, the more value you get at the end of each turn. Heck, we already talked about how busted Ben 10 is, and this just puts it right back into your hand. Truly, this is the Mighty Fighty, Four-Armed Fighter, Yellow-Orange Suit Dakini. Cyber Angel Izana is a level 8 monster with 2500 attack and 2600 defense. If this card is ritual summoned, you can make your opponent send a spell or trap card they control to the grave, and when this attacking card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, you can activate this effect, giving it a second attack on an opponent's monster in a row. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a Cyber Angel monster you control as a quick effect, you can shuffle a ritual monster from your grave into the deck, and if you do, destroy a card your opponent controls. This makes for a much stronger option going first, since it gives you some kind of interaction to work with. The removal is kinda but the double attack really seals the deal. Pair Izana with Dakini, and this makes for a double attacker with piercing, and that's before we consider any boosts from Idaten. 2500 attack is nice, 3500 is a slay. Like, literally, it's going to slay the competition. We're gonna need to find a way to hide the bodies. Our last monster is probably the one I hope gets busted sooner rather than later. Cyber Angel Vrash, a level 10 monster with 3000 attack and 2000 defense. If this card is ritual summoned, you can destroy as many face-up monsters your opponent controls as possible that were special summoned from the extra deck. And if you do, burn your opponent for 1000 damage each, and if you do that, this card can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. And this time, it's not limited to only monsters. And once per turn, during either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated that would destroy a card on the field, you can shuffle a ritual monster from your grave into the deck to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So, if your opponent only has 2 extra deck monsters on their board, Vrash comes down, wipes them out, burns for 2k, then double attacks for 6k more. And if I know my math, that's game. Granted, the game is a lot more diverse with its threats now, and while extra deck monsters are still some of the best on offer, the main deck isn't looking like a slouch either. But this will still put a huge dent in your opponent's game plan. Just make sure you don't run into any mirror forces while you do so. Wouldn't want to be rash with Vrash, would you? Alright, that does it for our monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. Merciful Machine Angel is a normal spell card that tributes a Cyber Angel monster from your hand or field to draw 2 cards, then place a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. But for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, you can't special summon monsters except ritual monsters. So this is the requisite archetypal draw 2 spell, but it's unfortunate, to say the least. Normally, the draw 2 is balanced out by the spell itself and the cost, but now we're tacking on the place a card on the bottom of the deck text, so this will resolve as a -1, unless you tribute either Ida 10 or Ben 10, which can make up for that. But now, instead of the archetypal draw 2 enabling your game plan, it basically expects you to have access to it to not ruin your card advantage. And if that wasn't enough, it has the unmitigated gall to lock you into ritual special summons for the rest of the turn, which is complete malarkey. But you know, on reflection, I wasn't really trying to do the pacifist run of Yu-Gi-Oh anyway, so let's get violent. Magnificent Machine Angel is a quick play spell card that tributes a Cyber Angel ritual monster from your hand or field, then targets a light fairy monster you control. It gains attack and defense equal to the level the monster had when tributed times 200 until the end of the turn, and this turn, if it battles an opponent's monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, that opponent's monster's effects are negated during the battle phase only. Okay, so it's kinda like a combat trick that hoses extra deck monsters, which isn't terrible. If you tribute Ida 10 or Ben 10, that's a 1200 point boost, which can help you get over some hefty threats while getting you a search. In fact, you might find it's the only way to get around certain monsters. At time of recording, X Pearly Noir is a big deal in multiple formats, but it's only protected from activated effects. So, much like Scareclaw Kashtira, this will make quick work of that pesky cat. So keep that in mind in case you're watching this video in the future and a similar monster is mucking about. It truly is a magnificent card, but only in a very, very specific circumstance. Machine Angel Ritual is a ritual spell card that can be used to ritual summon any Cyber Angel ritual monster by attributing monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster you want to ritual summon. And if any number of light monsters you control would be destroyed by a battle or card effect while this card is in the grave, you can banish this card instead. So that means this card is super searchable and gives your monsters that little extra layer of protection to help keep them going. It certainly makes cards like Azana and Vrash better because it's nice when your negation bodies can actually hold up to a stiff breeze. But it's not the only game in town. We've also got access to Machine Angel Absolute Ritual, a ritual spell that can also ritual summon any Cyber Angel ritual monster, and you can also tribute monsters from your hand or field, but you can also shuffle fairy and or warrior monsters from your grave into the deck to help with the requirements as well. But this time around, the levels do have to be exact. That's not too bad. Ida 10 and Ben 10 can cover for each other. Same for Dakini and Azana. Vrash is a little much as it's the only level 10, but either of our level 8s plus our level 2 Cyber Angel helpers covered that cost. Natasha is where things get tricky as they also have a unique level, but sadly they didn't make either of the helpers level 3 because that plus 2 would have been a really cute workaround. But in the vast majority of situations, this is going to help you recycle your resources while making your ritual summons cheaper. And that's pretty good all on its own, especially with art like that. Look, Cyber Petite Angel is sitting atop the pyre, staring down on us with those hollow eyes, demanding of us blood and flesh for the emergence of a new deity! So cute! Incarnated Machine Angel is a continuous spell card that keeps our Cyber Angel monsters from being destroyed by battle. And when you take damage by battle or an opponent's card effect, you contribute a Cyber Angel ritual monster from your hand or field to special summon a Cyber Angel ritual monster from your hand, and this is treated as a ritual summon. That's kinda goofy because this lets you spring Dakini's, Izana's, and Vrash's removal effect on your opponent's turn, which can really put a bee in their bonnet. The problem is that it's super telegraphed and requires you to have an abundance of Cyber Angels on hand to make work. And considering how combo oriented we are, holding onto our resources for a shot at resolving this isn't the vibe. Though despite that, it does do one of its jobs. It certainly is the incarnation of a flashy effect, one of the essences of Yu-Gi-Oh! Our last card is Ritual Sanctuary, a field spell card that lets you discard a spell card to add a light ritual monster or ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. You can also shuffle any number of spells from your grave into the deck, then target a light fairy monster in your grave whose level equals the number of cards you shuffled into the deck to special summon it. This is going to be our primary mode of getting our Cyber Angels into rotation, trading spells that aren't helping us into cards that will. But where it shines is that grave effect. While we could shuffle away a huge chunk of our spells to get back properly summoned ritual monsters, it's far better as a way to summon Cyber Egg and Petite Angel back out from our grave. For just 2 spells, we get another search and a couple of levels to help with those tribute summons, at which point they would be in the grave ready to be revived again. It really is the perfect marriage of form and function. So that's all the Cyber Angel cards, but what do we do with them? Well, if we're not going to tag along in some other ritual deck's posse, we're the type that likes to go second and beat the snot out of our opponent, using cards like Ida 10 to make our attack power go through the roof, Ben 10 to keep our resources stocked up, and our bigger angels supplying the beatdown. So we're going to bring as many other cards that work with rituals into our midst as possible to elevate our game plan. So what can we play to help them out? Manju of the 10,000 hands is basically a must in any ritual deck. Normal summon it, and that gets you either a ritual monster or spell, no matter the theme. Diviner of the Herald has kind of usurped it though. It activates on normal and special summon, and if you send Herald of the Arclight with its effect, it does the same thing as Manju, with the bonus of being 6 levels worth of material that, if tributed, will get you another small fairy for your troubles, which includes Cyber Petite and Egg Angel. Diviner is even just as easy to revive from the graveyard via Ritual Sanctuary, so they're the profit that makes sure you keep profiting. Oh, and speaking of diviner targets, Trias Hierarchia has some pretty interesting applications. Sending this to grave with Diviner's effect then lets you tribute the Diviner to summon it back out, which can then summon that Cyber Petite or Egg Angel. But at that point, it's really just doing a similar job as sending Arclight from the extra deck, but with extra steps. The real sauce happens when you get more fairies onto the board, as its on summon effect scales with how many fairies you tribute for it. 1 extra fairy gives you some non-targeting destruction, perfect for spot removal, and with a third, it's a Pot of Greed. And imagine what you can get up to if you manage to tribute monsters like Ben 10 and Ida 10 for it. Pre-prep doesn't work very well with us, but works wonders for a number of themes we can splash in. But regular preparation of rites is phenomenal. It gives us access to Ben 10, and if you have a ritual spell in grave, that's even more value. Remember, even if you can't use that spell to ritual summon before activating prep, that still means it makes for great discard fodder for another effect just in case. While going second is our plan of action, we still need options for going first, and thankfully, we have just the thing: Archlord Christia. You're gonna want to set up your field beforehand, of course, but once you do, this will not only keep your opponent from accessing any special summon plays, but will also keep them off of unorthodox removal like Kaijus. Drytrons may be known as the best companion for Ben 10, but for our purposes, I think incantations serve us well. Kandal or Talismandra can summon each other, giving you the perfect 10 levels for Vrash. Not to mention that Chalice Slime has always been a friend to us, and fits right under the level cap to be searchable by Prep of Rites. Pensaplume also gets Ben 10s back into our hand from the grave, and that's just pure value. As for other ritual themes we can work with, it's no secret that we mesh very well with the Heralds. Ultimateness sees a lot of play in Drytron, but Perfection is just fine with us. And its level 6 means it lines up perfectly well with Ben 10 and Ida 10, not to mention level boosted Diviners. As for a silly tech pick, I think it's time we introduced a fresh new monster into the ritual canon: Emperor Tanuki's Critter Count. Get this onto the board before you ritual summon, and you can use a monster from your extra deck as material to help with a ritual summon. And while you can only use this effect once per turn, Herald of the Arclight has no such restrictions, so you could potentially get more than a single search off of it in a single turn. Additionally, you can fill your extra deck with a whole bunch of different levels to help match what you want to ritual summon to smooth out the process. Alright, that's all the info I have about Cyber Angels, but how does it stack up against the Nova scale? Novelty. Cyber Angel is interesting, not because it started the trend of improving the ritual mechanic. I would argue Gishki led the charge on that one, but Cyber Angel does have its own claim to fame. Gishki helped give extra value to the ritual spells while giving us monsters that act as the whole tribute, Nekroz made ritual monsters that weren't total bricks, and Cyber Angel pioneered the use of ritual monsters as ritual material, rewarding you for playing a critical mass of them. So, for their part in the evolution of ritual, Cyber Angels get a 3 in novelty. Objectivity. However, I'd be lying if I said they didn't overcorrect on this. Ben 10 has been on the FNL list before, and for good reason. It does a lot to break the mechanic over its knee. Being able to search itself is already a huge issue, and then being able to incorporate any light fairy, not just ones associated with ritual summoning, gives the deck a lot of reach it otherwise wouldn't have. See Vanity's Ruler as an example. And the less said about Natasha, the better. However, in the modern game, answers do exist to these, so it's not as oppressive as it could be. So Cyber Angel earns itself a 3 in objectivity. Versatility. So I've already said that Ben 10 goes in just about everything ritual related, but how about the rest? Well, Ritual Sanctuary also isn't half bad, and Ida 10 sometimes crashes the party if you're in need for an extra boost or spell recycling. So I think it's fair to say that Cyber Angels also get a 3 in versatility. Awesomeness. So Cyber Angels are pretty useful, but tend to be used more as a means to an end rather than using their good payoffs. Dakini and Azana are pretty underwhelming, and the kinds of extra deck monsters vulnerable to Vrash barely exist anymore. Their aesthetic is rad as hell, and I appreciate how helpful they are, but as a theme, I can only give them a 3 in awesomeness, which means they get a 12 on the Nova scale with 3s across the board. Huh. And that's all I have to say about Cyber Angels. The theme has had an inarguable impact on the game as far as the ritual mechanic is concerned. And while you won't see a pure Cyber Angel deck run an event anytime soon, it's good to see that one of GX's greats is still out there in spirit, causing people to riot over your third activation of Snatch Steal in a single turn. God bless. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Cyber Angels worthy of the tribute, or are they just a bunch of cyber punks? And which one's your favorite? For me, it's easily Azana. It's got a perfect blend of sexy, powerful, and dynamic that I simply adore. Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales that also come with their own lore while saving 5% on your order. Just make sure to use code GoldenNova at checkout. Today's episode is also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including the illustrious Quasar Commanders Frankie and Marluxia is a Girl, Nebula Navigators 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Danny Bound, Dark Dragon X830, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Hair Bear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Hydrocraft 135, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Mega Combi, Millennia Asta, Molly Renata, Muzuki Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Sir Knight JCB, Skybuster Leo, The Wizard Moose, URTV 667 and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Alpha Sly, Almento 5010, A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Beluga Master, Blue Gem, Borger with a Shotgun, Chaz Ghost, Corbinisms, Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Emony, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Howling Zangetsu, Herbal D, Inblink, Jester Design, Kale the Dragon, Carp, Kevon Public, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, Michael Shimabukuro, Mustafa Aiden, Nitromo, Psycho Reaper Gaming, Shizuki Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, The Legendary Raven, Tucker Ordorn, Venusian Teapot, and Zeldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey in covering all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits, and participate in monthly custom card reviews, I'd be super grateful if you'd consider checking out my Patreon in the description or joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another archetype all about light fairy ritual monsters, check out this video where I cover the Heralds. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.